Good morning, everybody. You tuned into Crackcore. Thank you for being here today, which is Saturday the 26th of August 2023. So, have you ever had people just come into your life or just exit your life at the right time? I know I certainly have. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? It makes you wonder if there's a grand design for everything. You know, people talk a lot about reincarnation, all these different aspects that kind of tells a tale of how and why, I guess, people are in your life. Why sometimes, you know, you feel like you know people, even when you just met them the first time. I think that there's an awful lot to it. And whether or not it's the whole reason, I'm unsure, and I wouldn't like to say it, but I do think, what I will say is that I do think that some of it comes down to your own personal attractor field. Because I do believe in life everything's like a feedback loop. And whatever you kind of put out energy-wise is what you get back in return. Now, that doesn't mean to say that, like, you're putting out good, you're going to get good back. Like, don't get me wrong, a lot of the time you will. But I think it's deeper than that, personally. I think it's deeper than that. I think a lot of the time what you put out is what you get back, but in the ways of what you need. I'll go into this. I'll give a few examples. What if, for instance, somebody's overly nice all the time and they come across people that take them for granted, or, you know, like, just fucking use them for their kind nature. Perhaps because they know that that person's either not going to say no, or, you know, they're just a yes man. Because they don't like to disappoint. Well, that person who's being overly nice probably needs to come across people like that. That's what that energy field is attracting, so that they can learn how to be stronger. You know, because whatever it is that conducts this orchestra that we call life, there is something a bit more to it behind the scenes. And I personally believe there's a greater connectivity with, whether it's the soul or whatever you want to call it, the energy force that we have within us. There's a greater plan, I think. And I think a lot of the time we find ourselves blind to it, like disconnected. It's a strange one, because you almost have to accept that there's an energy force outside of what you recognize yourself as that's having an input in your life. It's quite a fascinating kind of scenario or concept, isn't it? But anyway, what you need potentially is what you attract. Let's just look at this. I mean, perhaps that being overly nice, not wanting to disappoint, is literally just that. They're being overly nice because perhaps they don't want to disappoint. Which kind of means they're being overly nice through a sense of fear. And maybe if those actions are coming from the seat of fear, that's why it's kind of being distorted and then attracting people, taking them for granted, as a way of it healing itself. You know, that part of you is trying to heal itself by attracting those other aspects to it for some form of, you know, lesson or a tactic to, you know, I guess raise awareness to that negative, destructive characteristic that perhaps that person is carrying around. Because we should never, you know, we look at this from the perspective of personal power and self-worth. We should never go out of our way to please others from a sense of fear of disappointing them and override what it is that may be best for us in the process. Now let's just look at this from another aspect, like a different angle. What if a person is the other way and not being nice at all? Perhaps they're walking through life and they think they're fucking, I don't know, something special. They're being horrible to people. You know, they're the person who's abusing other people. Let's just say they're the person who's taking others for granted. Judgmental, all these different aspects. What happens is they perhaps attract to them other bad people. And sometimes it's through this process that these bad people end up realizing that they're not as bad as they thought. And they kind of get a bit of a short, sharp shock into realization that there are a lot worse people than them out there. And that can, in a lot of cases, rectify that behavior and stop that person being such a bad person after all. So again, this could be, I mean, obviously for that you'd need an element of self-reflection and self-critique. Otherwise, I guess that person being of a weaker energy field in respects to their badness could be consumed by the greater force, and therefore this is where you get like peer pressure activity going on, because they become consumed by the stronger aspects of their character in somebody else and then just kind of get dragged along with it. But you know, again, this is where your inner self, your higher self perhaps, is attracting to it that which it needs in order to develop past that particular weakness within itself. I think it's a good, you know, like a good thing to be thinking about when we meet people, or when, say, perhaps certain people just exit our lives. It's very, very interesting, because I know that I've had, like I said, many occasions where I've had folks enter and exit my life, and it seems, when you look back at it, very opportune. It seems very timely. And I think if most people think about this, that's also what they will find, is that a lot of the time certain things happen in their life, they change their actions, they change how they feel, and naturally certain people drop away. Naturally certain people then become you know, will gravitate towards, and it always seems to be the right people at the right time. And if you're able to see that, if you're able to look at that, obviously a lot of the time with hindsight, it's easier to see these things, especially with the things that we perceive as being negative, or the people that we perceive as being negative in our lives. Of course, because at the time when we're involved with somebody who doesn't make us feel very good, it's easy, isn't it, to it's easy to kind of, I guess, live in a bit of denial and think to ourselves, well, this is happening to me and I'm a victim and so on and so forth, when really, if we could acknowledge within ourselves, with a sense of self-responsibility and self-power, I guess, again, there it is, that this is us happening to ourselves, well then we'd have, in my opinion, a greater view on how to maneuver through this fucking soup that life sometimes tends to be. It's a funny old game. You know, it's easy for people to say, you know, I mean, I've said it before as well, change your energy, you know, meditate, do all this kind of stuff, and you'll see the things in your life change. I think that's true. But perhaps you've been brought to a point of meditation and self-awareness, you know, and self-elevation because you've been forced, because that's what you need, and it's like what you've been forced into doing based on your own personal circumstance in life. Now, I know that when I went heavily into meditation and stuff like that, I was in a very negative place in life. I was involved with somebody who just wasn't supposed to, well, they were obviously supposed to be in my life, but our energies didn't necessarily match up in the ways that I suppose people in that position with each other should do. And it turned out that this particular person was very negative, and you know, it's very difficult to say without saying. I'm not trying to slag anybody off, or because I truly believe there is an absolute reason for everything. Because without that negativity, without that abusive, crushing situation that I found myself in, I would never have been pushed into that mind frame of needing to escape somehow and find myself, because I truly lost myself in that scenario. You know, this is the effect that other people can have on you should you allow it to happen, should their energy be of that kind of, whatever you call it, frequency, resonance, whatever. It's like somebody sticking a fucking, you know, putting a stick in a bucket of water and just swooshing it around. Your energy just becomes distorted and you can't ever get it to settle. So sometimes you need to take yourself out and meditate, and that's what I found to be the best medicine for it. But because of that meditation, because of all of that inward looking and this calm that I was able to bring to myself in all of that chaos, it changed me as a person. I found the light in the darkness, so to speak. And because of that, my energy changed in a massive way. My life turned around. And I see now that that person, that scenario was always meant to happen, because it pushed me forward in a way that I would never have been able to push myself, or would have not perhaps had the motivation to do so in such a way without that experience taking place. Now, at the time, like I said, it was abusive, it was horrible and disgusting, and it's difficult at times to accept in the moment that these things have a purpose, and that perhaps you've attracted that to you. because that's what you needed to give you that motivation in order to self-elevate. Now, afterwards, should you be pushed to the reflective state, and you're able to see that there was a purpose for it afterwards, with that introspective view, you can then take that forward, and hopefully in the future, should there ever be another scenario that happens like that, have a better overview of the situation where you can kind of navigate it in the moment, as opposed to having to go through something for such a long time, and then have to look at it retrospectively again. Because if we can, in the moment, every living day, accept that whatever is going on is based on whatever we need in that moment right there, well, then we're able then, I suppose, to perhaps in some ways tweak it. If you're having a bad day, maybe look at what it is you're feeling and how things are going. What is it that is trying to teach you? What is it that you are trying to teach yourself by giving yourself that experience? They say that we're living in a matrix. They say that this whole world is a projection, and we project our own reality. That's what they say. Well, this, I guess, buys into that scheme somewhat, because if everything is happening for us because of us, well, then that would allude to the fact that we are projecting our own reality based on what it is, not that we want, but a lot of the time what it is we actually need and don't realize we need, because we're unconscious to it. And I think that's the point. I think that's the key to this, is having that consciousness, like I've said, in the moment, on every living moment, in every living day, having that consciousness, that awareness to say, well, right now I'm having this experience because whatever I'm feeling, however I am, whatever I'm doing, this is a feedback loop in order to help me progress in some way, to help me see a situation in some way. Because let's just say these big things in life that change us, we tend to pay attention to these things because they're massive life events, like the one I explained a minute ago. And we kind of revere these things and say, yes, it was number 1 or number 2 or number 3 in my life. Because you get those pivotal moments in life, don't you? 2 or 3 or 4 times. But I think because we pay so much attention and so much focus on those big, massive, life-changing events that happen because of this, a lot of the time we can overlook the small things. Maybe it had to accumulate to such a big event because we didn't pay attention to the small things. Maybe if in the moment we're able to acknowledge that this is what's happening, we've got this feedback loop with all around us, with our own reality, maybe it won't have to accumulate into such a big, grandiose event where we have to sometimes either lose everything, lose everyone, because that's a lot of the time what people express, isn't it? They say, oh, I had to lose everything to realise what I'd got. Well, maybe you don't have to if you're able to live in the moment and have a little bit more consciousness over what it is that our feedback with this world around us is trying to tell us. And on that note, I'm going to wish love and peace to all things everywhere. This is Crag Course signing off. Thank you for being here with me today. Peace.